Hey everyone, welcome to Forever Young, Living with Longevity. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Johnson, and we're going to talk about living a long and wonderful, active life. So, living with longevity, and ultimately, I believe that nobody is truly promised tomorrow, but hopefully that gives us some level of urgency for what it is that we can do today to make changes to our lives today, not tomorrow. But how many of you have seen or remember what's called the Serenity Prayer? It goes something like this: God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so today we're talking about the things that we can change, and ultimately, it's what we do today that determines our future. It's a cause and effect part that we can contribute to. And we're to be good stewards of the mind and body that we have, and we will reap what we sow. So let's sow some good things. But to be fair, most of us really have not been taught how to do that. In fact, there are many things that I was taught growing up that I've now learned are completely wrong and were actually detrimental to my health, thinking all the time that they were actually doing something good for me. And so you may have much to learn. I know that I did. And to be honest, I will continue to learn. But longevity in general, research says that the human body has a potential to live between 80 and 120 years of quality life. One Harvard study looked at the longevity of the brain and said that our brains can live right about 120 years. And if you look at Genesis in the Bible, in chapter 6, it says, his days shall be 120 years. Now, here's the thing. We're not talking about simply existing and being kept alive, barely breathing with machines for 120 years. What we're talking about is quality of life in those years that God gives you, to be able to contribute and to be able to fulfill purpose and have good energy and passion through those years, to be able to be there for your grandkids' wedding, to be able to play on the beach, to be able to do those things that we would consider life. So let's get started. Ultimately, our mission and what we want to do to empower you here is we want to empower longer, healthier lives through chiropractic care and an integration of what's called the 5 essentials of life. And so some of you, these are going to be new ideas, and for some of you, these are ideas that'll be a bit of a review. And we'll certainly have a lot of new information as well, but many of you will go through these relatively quickly. And if you need some extra support on how to go about engaging in these principles that we walk through, don't worry, we'll provide that for you. There will be links below in this video. You'll be able to plug in to that. You'll be able to click on those links to be able to take action. I know that some of you, if you're not a patient already, you'll want to be able to come in to the office, and there'll be that opportunity. There'll be some resources we'll talk about, and those of you who want to have access to those, you'll be able to do that as well. Just take a look below the video. But when you look around and you see the health movements that began to happen maybe 10, 15 years ago, there were many things starting to show up. You'll see Whole Food stores popping up around the country, and you'll see all kinds of fitness trends, and you'll see the DVDs, and you'll see the CrossFit, and you'll see diets like the Whole30 or the Paleo diet or the ketogenic diet or the plant-based diet. And you would think that with all these trends that society would be getting actually healthier in America. But the reality is that Americans by and large are very much not. And there are many people who are actually getting sicker, and that's even, it's actually even the exception or the rarity that people are healthy. And so it's so rare to have a quality of life and to function well into later years that it's looked at like some sort of unicorn, like it's this thing that doesn't really even exist. But the reality is that not only does it exist, it's actually very achievable if you do the right things. And that's exactly what we'll talk about today. And so what are the things that we're seeing that makes a difference? As we look around at people that we've worked with over the years and all of the doctors across the country, what is it that we're seeing? What are the core things that make the difference for people to make it to 80, to 90, to 100, and able to have vitality, dancing at their grandchildren's weddings, being able to play on the beach, enjoying retirement, or even pursuing a long sought after passion late in life, and ultimately having the energy and the physical health to actually do that. And so what we've learned, what changes you can make today to age with vitality and strength, the 5 essentials are built on the principles that a healthy lifestyle sustains you and your well-being and helps prevent disease. So the core of chiropractic is very simple. It's built around the idea and the mentality that your body is made to heal itself, and that your brain is where the power is, right? It's like if you have an electricity, that it has a source, right? The power for your physical body, the source is your brain. And we kind of understand that one. We know that the brain controls things. You know that without the brain, the body's clinically dead. So we know that's where life is. We know that's where the power is. But you may not recognize that your body's actually wired. You're literally wired. And so that power has to run through the wires, through the spinal cord and through the nerves to be able to control for your heart to beat, for your lungs to breathe, for your stomach to digest food. And so what happens from all of the daily things that we do that put pressure on our spine is that can begin to interfere with that power. Okay, so it's not usually just cut the wire, things shut down completely, although that physically can happen. That's very rare. What's very common, unfortunately, is a slow diminishing of that, so subtly often that we don't notice it for years and even decades later do we find our symptoms showing up. And so unfortunately that happens for many. So my encouragement is to check the health of the spine at a very early age and take care of it and keep an eye on those things, like hygiene for anything else, like for your teeth or any of those things. You would want to have good hygiene for that. So good hygiene for your spine through chiropractic and stretching and exercises to be able to take care of the backbone, you will, of your health. And so as we look at the other essentials, we need to pay attention to nutrition, because there are so many different diet fads out there, and we want to be clear about what is truly going to give us the best longevity. As we look at different cultures and we look at people in our culture that do that well, we'll walk through the specific things to pay attention to and what are things that we don't necessarily need to. Mindset is huge. Mindset is really where so many of these things begin for you, because if your mindset is limited in such a way that you don't feel like you can be healthy throughout life, then you'll literally never pursue it. And then if you don't pursue it in our society, you don't automatically get there. It's so rare to be healthy throughout. And then oxygen and exercise is the next one. Ultimately, all of your cells need oxygen. That's pretty simple. And then we just need to minimize toxins. And so there are more things in and around us than really have ever been in human history. So we need to be very clear about what it is that we're doing and to pay attention to that and to take some simple actions that we can do on a practical level that really makes a difference moving forward. Okay, so one of the things to recognize is that despite the fact that we spend the most on healthcare in America, that Americans in a large number of studies, this used to be something that years ago many people didn't really recognize it, but I think now most people really recognize that Americans are in worse health and they die earlier and they suffer from more diseases than virtually any other wealthy nation. So the National Academies Press in 2013, there are studies after studies after studies looking at how we're in the last in several benchmark areas. We're literally last place for infant mortality, for injuries and homicides. We're in last place for teenage pregnancies and STDs, HIV, AIDS prevalence, disability, drug-related deaths, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and chronic lung disease came out of this particular study. And when you begin to recognize this, ultimately, we just need to recognize that we need to do something different, that we cannot do what everybody else is doing simply because that's what our culture teaches. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best thing for us. In fact, it can actually go very badly if we simply follow the trends. So let's go look at a couple of other countries and see what it is that they're doing so we can learn from them. So if you take a look at Greece, Icari, for example, compared to Americans, they tend to live about 8 years longer. They tend to experience 20% less cancer and 50% less heart disease and have almost no cases of dementia. So a lot of what they do is very much naturally. So they wake up naturally, so they don't have the blaring alarm clocks. And they tend to spend time working in their gardens. They eat late lunches, followed by naps. And after sunset, they spend quality time socializing with their neighbors. Traditional exercise really isn't a large part of their lifestyle because they simply do life with activity. Another thing that they do within their diet is that mainly their vegetables are harvested from their own gardens. So a lot of greens, plenty of olive oil, which we understand has many benefits. Another several things that are typical in this particular diet are goat's milk, wine, sage tea or coffee, honey. Uh, a lot of lunch is primarily vegetables or beans or plant-based kind of things. When they take a look at that, spinach and whatever seasonal vegetables happen to be there. Additionally, they're known for drinking many antioxidant-rich herbal teas with ingredients like wild mint or rosemary. So we know that their diet, we know that their physical activity, and we know that their social life, and we know that their stress levels are radically different than the average Americans. Let's go ahead and take a look at Sardinia in Italy. Sardinia is a home of more male centenarians than anywhere else on the planet. And the mountainous highlands of this Italian island boast the world's highest concentration of centenarian men. Its population consumes actually a pretty low protein diet, which has in their population lower rates of diabetes, cancer, and death for people under the age of 65. One of the things that they found in this particular study is that a cultural attitude celebrated the elderly, which is completely different than our society. Most people tend to look at, as we age, we tend to have more dysfunctions and be more of a burden. But if age is looked upon with wisdom and with a celebratory attitude, then we'll have a radically different perception. And so they're engaged in community, extended family homes until they were in their hundreds. I mean, Sardinians typically walk many miles every day, so a lot of activities, a factor that likely contributes to a lot of their longevity, physical health. And according to the Blue Zones website, I would highly encourage you to take a look at the Blue Zones information. But a few important Sardinian principles to include are things like putting family first, celebrating elders, and then just walking more, as well as laughing with friends. Now, let's take a look at Okinawa in Japan. Now, this is interesting because this is the home of the world's oldest women. And the largest island in a subtropical archipelago controlled by Japan, Okinawa is home to the world's longest lived women. Food staples like the sweet potatoes in Okinawa, the soybeans, the mugwort, and then turmeric. You may have heard many things about, many research articles about it. And then what they have is a bitter melon, the Goya, helps to keep Okinawans living long and healthy lives. And the Okinawans also they have a very low risk of atherosclerosis in their arteries and stomach cancer, very low risk of hormone-dependent cancers such as breast or prostate cancer. They eat 3 servings of fish a week on average, plenty of vegetables, fermented soy products, which is interesting because that's completely different than American soy. They also have a lot of squid, octopus, which is rich in taurine that can also lower cholesterol and blood pressure. So as we start looking at these things, there are some overlapping principles coming back to a mindset. In our society, we tend to have age as a mindset of, you know what, I'm just old. And so we use that as an excuse to not change or to keep dealing with things. And I hear this from people in their 30s, you know, I'm just getting older. And to be fair, I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, talk to the 60, 70-year-olds that are doing better than you are, right? That are stronger than you are, that are more capable than you are, that have better vitality than you are. It's not age. It's what you do with those years that really matters. And so Aristotle said, happiness is a sort of action, which means that if we leave it up to chance and we don't make a difference, then ultimately happiness is not going to be there. But happiness is more like a choice. It's a mindset of creating peace. It's about building peace and not managing stress or managing chaos, because you can't manage chaos, but doing things that build peace in your life. And so personally, a great exercise would be to write down those things that do that for you. What are the things that build peace? What are the things that refresh you, that rejuvenate you, that refuel you? So for me, music can be a part of that. Art can be a part of that. Being with friends and laughing can be a part of that. Some of you may just need to go into a quiet place or go out into nature to rejuvenate. Whatever that is for you, make it a priority in your life to make that happen. And ultimately, that comes down to planning, which will ultimately decrease the being rushed mentality of the hyper busy but not getting anything done mentality that most of us have on a day-to-day basis. And then choosing to love your life. If we focus on the things that we have versus focusing on the things that we don't have, it completely changes your life. Test me on this one. If you focus on the good and you focus on the positive things that you already have, it's like practicing being happy for the things that you want by being happy with the things that you have now. It's literally practicing happiness. It's working out your happiness muscles, if you will. And so it really comes down to a perspective choice. It's your expectations. Often there's a gap between what we expect and what we see in our current reality. So if your expectation is not being met, often we have a hard time being happy. So we might have some unrealistic expectations that we need to manage. Or we need to start paying attention to the reality that we have and start either, if we don't like it, make some changes to our current reality, or recognize that we need to be looking at the good things that we already have and grow that happiness muscle. And man, focus on some relationships in your life. Often when it's so busy, we don't put the time and energy into those connections. The people that are most important to us, make it a priority to connect with them, to build that relationship, to build that love with them. Because if we focus solely on the feeling of it, feelings can run away because they're not being worked. It's very much like a garden. You must work the garden to bear the fruit or the vegetables out of that. You must work it in order to produce. And recognizing too that you as an individual, as a person, that you're a human being, you're not a human doing, that you are already significant enough and of enough value to put time and energy and effort into, and that God saw fit enough to give you life. You have a significance in and of yourself outside of your ability to contribute. So when we take a look at laughter, it may well be the best medicine you can possibly have, way better than any pharmaceutical drugs out there, and it's best delivered with gratefulness, joy, and meaningful human connection. Sounds familiar to what I was just saying, but Japanese researchers evaluated responses of over 20,000 people. They found that people who laughed more simply had better health. It's crazy. The study was done in 2016. And they were looking at cardiovascular disease and all of this cross-sectional study, but literally people who laughed more had better health. So get to laughing, have some fun, be goofy. It's awesome. And you might just enjoy it along the way. All right, so one of the other things that I'm going to finish up part one with is getting involved, because connection with people and feeling a sense of purpose are so important for your life as well as personal growth. When we look at getting involved, individuals who volunteer have lower mortality rates than those who do not. States that have higher volunteer rates are more likely to have greater longevity and less incidence of heart disease. High daily activity is associated with a reduced risk of Alzheimer's disease. But ultimately, living a life full of purpose and having a connection with people makes such a massive difference. And personally, I've started getting involved in other communities to be able to do something outside of myself and to do something rewarding and something fulfilling. I started volunteering at the homeless shelter in town at Home Sweet Home Ministries, and I started bringing chiropractic to the residents there. And I started doing that several years ago. And it's been hugely rewarding and hugely beneficial to myself included, to obviously the benefits that they've had from getting care. But one of the interesting things about volunteering and about getting involved and connecting with people is that you get a lot of those benefits as well, is that literally you receive by giving. You've heard it's more blessed to give than to receive. And that's just another great example of how that fulfills itself out in our life. And as we take a look at what's coming for part two, we're going to get into more of the nutrition and we're going to get into more of the fitness and look at the specific principles as we go through that. But thank you for joining us for part 1 of Forever Young. We've got 2 more parts coming. If you like this video, go ahead and press that like button. Simply do that. At the corner, there should be a subscribe button. You can click that and hit the bell icon to get notifications whenever we upload a new video. And if you have questions or if you have some comments about these things that are mentioned, or you have some things that you want to know about, go ahead and comment down at the bottom of the video. Ask those questions. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're looking for some action steps to get plugged into one of the community dinner programs that we do locally, if you're looking at some of the resources that we'll talk about, or if you want to become part of our office community as a patient and get care, then you can do that as well. Just take a look below. There are links for each of those things. Go ahead and fill out the Google form that's right down there, and we'll help get you connected with exactly what it is that you need. All right, guys. Have a great day.